This is Thrive Perspectives, an ever-growing discussion about the issues and ideas that shape our lives, with your guide, Dr. Matthew Jacoby.
Welcome, listeners. It's Stu here, your host of the Thrive Today podcasts. Just before we jump into this episode of Thrive Perspectives, we're excited to launch our crowdfunding campaign to build the Thrive Today app. This app will bring together everything you love: Thrive podcasts, daily Bible reading guides, teaching video series, and a growing library of meaningful resources designed to deepen your faith journey. To make this vision a reality, we need to raise $30,000. The build won't begin until the full amount is raised, and if we don't reach our target by the end of January 2026, every donation will be refunded in full. So your support is absolutely vital. Will you partner with us? If so, simply visit our website, thrivetoday.tv, click the app crowdfunding link at the top. You can then select your level of support. We'll keep you updated on progress as we seek to raise the funds needed by the end of January 2026. Welcome to Thrive Perspectives. This is your host, Stu, and in this episode, a continuation of our big ideas that change the world, we're stepping into the paradox, the place where resistance holds us back and desire drives us forward. We'll ask what it means to know, not just intellectually, but spiritually, through the confluence where longing meets mystery and certainty gives way to awe and wonder. Why do we resist the very presence we crave? What does it mean to be drawn toward God while holding back from the mountain's edge? And how can spiritual knowing emerge not from mystery, but from surrender? Let's join Matt and Connell as we share and discuss some of our personal reflections on how we experience God. Good morning, Matt. Good morning, Connell.
Morning, Stuart.
Here we are back in the studio and Thrive Perspectives. And kind of coming to the end, let's just say, of our Big Ideas series as we try to really relate some of the worldviews that we've really experienced over the last few weeks into how we therefore experience God today. How do we know God? How do we grow in our knowledge of God and our trust in Him? And so we're going to share some personal experiences over this episode, maybe some more, but certainly this episode, and really kick off with, in a sense, the metaphor that we've used, the leap to faith. Connell, in a previous episode, you shared the idea of the perspective of standing on the edge of a cliff and wanting to jump, in a sense, but just everything holding you back, that resistance. And so why don't you kick us off with what you've been learning from God over these last few episodes as we've talked through all this stuff?
Sort of picking up, I think, on the themes that we've been talking about, the core thing that I've personally taken away from it is this whole idea of being in control of my own rational, need to understand all the time. I've always got to process everything with my brain. I've got to understand everything. And that's just kind of like core to who I am. And so I'm a classic overthinker, and I'll just keep thinking and wondering and trying to work it out.
Which is coupled with being able to sort of predict and know, I have a sense of control over circumstances. I kind of know that tomorrow, it's the security. It's not just abstract knowledge, is it? It translates into a way of living where knowing how tomorrow's going to go, like, okay, I'm secure enough, I've got these investments, I've got this, I know I can pay those bills. As I said, it translates into a tendency to live in a certain way where we have a certain level of security that doesn't feel like it doesn't ever feel like stepping into unknown.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I think in the last episode too, we mentioned this metaphor of the box, the box is the boundary of the things that we know. And it came out of that as,
and that we can think. That we can even think. Yeah, that's right.
So, and we all know this, that box is just like an impression of what exists something. We know stuff exists outside the box, but we can't possibly know what that is. We talked about, Kant and Hume and through all the different discussions that we had there with different philosophers through.
Well, we can I just, let me just correct that. We can know it, but not in the sense of comprehending. So the box is our comprehension. there are ways of apprehending what is outside the box. And of course, most crucially, God reveals himself to us and we can know God. But we need to be very, very mindful that we don't reduce God and the ways of God to that box of comprehension. Like I can comprehend what this is about. This makes sense to me. All of that sort of stuff has to be somewhat let go of.
Yeah. So how we tackle that is, I mean, some people through history and the philosophers have wrestled with this, and some of them have said, well, we can't know about what's beyond the boundaries of that box, so therefore we just restrict ourselves to only knowing the things that is inside the box. This is accessible to
so
us.
we just reduce reality to what we can comprehend, and everything else isn't even real. Don't even think about it. Can't be meaningful. There's lots of different versions of that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And this is where we sort of propose this other idea of going to the edge of the cliff, that the reality is that the way I see it is my knowledge and reason takes me to the boundaries of that box, or think of it as going to the edge of the cliff. And there's a sense of looking out down into the valley beyond and the mountains and the landscape that stretches way out ahead of you, but you can't go there because you're standing on the edge of the cliff. And there's a sense within, I think, all of us that we're able to look out and go, there's something beyond. And it's almost like the edge of the cliff isn't just the limit of where we're meant to go, but it may be the limit of our knowledge and understanding. And so there's a sense of wanting to go beyond, but that's not going to get us to where we need to go.
So for clarity, and again, metaphors are just metaphors, aren't they? But it helps. I mean, the reason we use metaphors is because we are grasping for something that's beyond pure
comprehension,
pure logical analysis. And we find ourselves and I would say with the most important things in life, we find ourselves at the edge of our comprehension, which is a very important experience for us because it reminds us that we are human and we're not God, right? We're not the all-comprehending God that's outside of reality looking in. So one of the big problems in philosophy, and this is of course something that Kierkegaard was critical of, some of the philosophy that was at its, epitome in his day, this idea of creating these whole systems of reality, kind of logical notions of reality, and as though we're kind of on the outside and reality is this object that we can, that we can comprehend and understand and predict and so forth. And he diagnoses that as a kind of God complex, like we're not outside of reality, we're on the inside. And we encounter the edges of reality and we tend to turn back. But the most important things, namely the God who created us and who cradles us in his providence and who sustains and upholds our very being, this is a God that we can't grasp, but who is grasping us. And so, we find ourselves there, I guess, at the edge of our comprehension, which is what you're saying is the edge of the cliff. And to bring it back to what I said before, we're actually called in a way, we're called to live in a way that's constantly stepping into the purpose and the providence of God. If we restrict ourselves to what is predictable, have a sense of, okay, this is the next, here's a railing I can grasp onto. If we're always looking for an understandable, a logical railing, like I'm going to go, at a mundane level, I'm going to make this choice because that feels like something I can hold on to. That feels more stable. Whereas actually God might be wanting us to go another way and we can't possibly comprehend that that's going to lead anywhere good. But God says this is what it means to actually step out and walk by faith.
Which is what it is really. It's faith. And that's what God's trying to teach us, how to step out without necessarily like knowing things or knowing God, but without necessarily feeling like.
I think it is. Sorry to push back here.
Yeah.
Like, again, I would just want to distinguish. There's knowing and there's knowing, right? Because I don't think faith isn't blind. It's not like stepping out blindly. We can know God, but not in that subject-object kind of form of knowledge where we kind of grasp it, right? Because we're addicted. We've said, before, we're addicted to that way of knowing, right?
Facts, doctrines, systems.
We want to know in this way. There's this kind of God complex. I want to grasp this. It's got to make sense to me. That's a kind of God complex. So absolutely, we can't know God in that way, in the sense of comprehending God. But we can apprehend God and we can know God relationally, right? In fact, as we've said before, in a sense, at a very base level, everyone knows God. Everyone is experiencing God all the time, right? It's just so constant and so fundamental. It's not something we can stand objectively to. It's like the very flow of life, and, our consciousness and everything is the result of God, not only having created us, but sustaining and upholding us perpetually, right? I'm not talking about pantheism here. And we've talked about this in past episodes, right? So the point is, we are all experiencing the reality of God all the time. It's not some discrete object that we can circumscribe intellectually. I think that's
a good
an important point. Yeah.
But I think but we've got to know in a different way.
Yeah.
We've got to know in a different way.
And that's where God's leading us.
And this involves choice. And I think that was going back to Kierkegaard's insight. We make choices. That the most primary thing that we ever do is to make a choice. And then we reason from our choices, right? His insight was the premise on which all of our subsequent reasoning happens. Because reason is just a tool. And like we've said before, we always reason from a premise that reason itself cannot establish. Okay. Yeah. So so Kierkegaard's insight is that we make a choice first. Choice comes first, right? That's the most fundamental aspect. And then we reason from that. Now, what this means is that everything is determined by an act of the will. And he famously says, truth is subjectivity. What he means by that is that there's always a starting point in choice. It's not a choice between subjectivity and objectivity, and by that objectivity means as though we can stand outside of reality and scrutinize it as like some intellectual object. We can't do that. We're on the inside. And so we don't have that outside view. So we have to start with a choice. And the difference is not between subjectivity and objectivity, according to Kierkegaard, but with the right kind of subjectivity and the wrong kind of subjectivity. In other words, the right kind of choice and the wrong kind of choice. And it is a choice between, do we flow, to use another, man, we've got all the metaphors here at Thrive Perspectives.
That's it. Yep.
We've got all the metaphors.
I hate metaphors. I actually do. I just generally dislike
the creative side of me loves them, and the Bible's full of them, so you better get used to them. There's a sense of we either flow with the reality of the being of God or we go against it.
Yep.
They're the choices. And it's a flow that draws us in one sense, but there's an inner rebellion, there's an inner God complex that wants to fight that, right? And we will talk about that a little bit more.
And let's think about where that started. Did God really say? It's like you make a choice. Yeah. Do I trust God or do I decide I'm taking into my own hands?
And so faith is really what we're describing as the right kind of subjective stamp. We're all trapped in our subjectivity. If you want to live in accordance with ultimate truth, and at no point here are we saying that there is no object, truth. Of course, there's the absolute truth. Yeah. But the point, what we're saying here is, how do you know, right? How do you know? And making the right kind of choice to actually, in Kierkegaard's terms, to almost become true. To make a choice to flow with that there is a synchronicity with who we are and what we're created to be, and the choice that we make to be who we are, essentially to flow with God, to unite with God rather than fight against God.
Yep.
That's the choice of faith. Do we entrust ourselves to that or do we play God the other way?
It's almost like there's like a kind of an intersection point there where we kind of paralyze ourselves from making that choice, even though we end up making it by default anyway. But I think we end up in a place where it's difficult to make the choice if we're always questioning and always trying to go, but why did you do this, God? Will you do this? How can I trust you? You know,
Yeah, that's a very good point.
So we get stuck here.
Yeah,
and that's where I've sort of recognised.
Do you know?
Myself.
Let me throw a great quote in there. I know I'm talking a lot about Kierkegaard, but this is my sort of academic zone, right?
Yeah.
Kierkegaard addresses that, right? He addresses the irony, the tragic irony of speculation, right? Endlessly trying to think your way out of the box, or trying to and he says, because every moment, like that cycle of speculation, he says every moment in which you do not have God is wasted. So that whole trying to speculate your way to God, the whole thing is wasted. You start with God.
Yeah.
You can't build a sort of intellectual Tower of Babel to reach God. You're never going to get there.
And that's the problem.
It's a waste of time.
And we're stuck there. And I think we've been studying sort of, Exodus, book of Exodus. You've been talking about it on Thrive Deeper.
Mm.
And so working your way through there, and,
we're in Revelation now, buddy, so look out. We'll start pulling that out, and we'll really we'll really frighten the children.
Yeah. I'm still trying to process Exodus at this point.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's actually had such a big impact on me. But we were talking, Matt, about when Moses went up the mountain. And Moses went up the mountain, and that's where God had called him. But the rest of the people, they couldn't go up the mountain.
Mm.
And if they dared to put the foot on the mountain, then they'd be kind of struck down dead.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about that, you sort of looked at me and goes, well, none of us actually really want to go up the mountain, because I'm talking as if I want to go up the mountain. Oh, I want to go up the mountain. Why can't I? Where's the mountain? How do I go up the mountain? You said to me, you don't want to go up the mountain, right? Which is kind of like, what? Why would I not want?
Yeah, you looked at me with a slightly shocked look.
Like, what? Why would I not want to go up the mountain? That would be amazing to go up the mountain.
Mm. So what do you think? Like, what?
That actually started, I think, a whole sort of chain reaction of thoughts.
Before you go on to that, can I explain? Let me just quickly explain what I meant.
Yeah.
What I meant by that. And probably the most important realization for me is that we don't start seeking God from a neutral point. Like, we are actively resistant to God.
Yes.
We actually don't really want to live by faith.
Mm.
We don't really want to, right? We want to be in control. We want to...
Yeah, which is what we've said.
Yeah, that's right. We want that, right? Yeah. We like the security of the box, so to speak, right? And so we kind of we live in a way, we effectively pretend that the box is all there is. It's like the kid that hides under the bed because it's like a spiritual kind of agoraphobia, right? We lock ourselves in the house because all of that's I can't cope with the bigness of everything outside, and we
it raises more questions and gives us answers, and we want answers.
That's right. So we hide in our little, in our little box, in our sort of house, and so we don't face the bigness of the reality outside. I mean, we will all face that reality. I mean, we've talked about like near-death experiences and all these sorts of things. Like we're going to break out of this box, right? The box, the house, however you want to put it, is going to dissolve, and we will be in the grip of the reality that we always were in the grip of that. But for the moment, somehow we manage to deceive ourselves that it's not out there, but it's more complex than that. What I discovered is that there is something within me that holds on, that holds me inside, that keeps the doors closed, and it's almost like a self-protection. Mm-hmm. It's like, I've described in my book, Deeper Places, I described it like, if God is everywhere, if we're immersed in the presence of God like an infinite ocean, then why does God seem so remote, right? If it's true, like I said before, if it's true that God is, everywhere and upholding us, and we're immersed in the presence of God, well, in the book I describe us as being like almost like inside like a deep sea submarine, because we've created almost like a shell just to slightly keep that, keep that at bay, and there's a sense of security that we have. A weird form of security. It's a self-delusory sort of security that's very difficult for us to let go of, right? And it's actually harder than we think.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whoever calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. We can be saved from that, but watch out what you pray for, because you're going to get something that deep down you don't really want, because God's going to start breaking the shell, but that's going to become a wrestle, right? So as soon as you step over the threshold, things are going to start breaking down that you actually don't really want to break down and let go of.
Yep.
In one sense. Of course, your deepest human, most fundamental desire is for God, but at a level there is a resistance. I mean, look, this is what, like, to be theological about, this is what the Bible calls sin. Sin is not just a moral category. It's relational, right? It's deeply relational. It's, as one theologian put it, it's not giving God what is due to him. That's one definition of sin, I think by Louis Berkhoff or someone. Anyway, and I think it's a good definition, because what is it that we're meant to give God? Yes, we give God the glory, we give God, but actually ourselves, like, fundamentally. And
it's letting go. It's letting go of control, which is ultimately, I think, what we're trying to do with our thoughts and trying to reason and trying to retain control is letting go of that. So in one sense,
to be completely overpowered by God.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want that.
A lot of us would say,
yes, please.
We do want that.
Yeah, that's right.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Until
we realize we don't.
But at what cost? How much control are you prepared to give up?
Yes.
And so in the middle of that, then you've got your...
Yeah, so this is going up the mountain. So carry on. So this was what Matt was sort of unpacking into.
That's why I said you don't want to go up the mountain.
Yeah. And that is why I think. Yeah. And that's where I kind of got, because I think if we stay in this place of having to reason everything out and be in control of everything and understand everything, and that's the basis of which we step out into the things that God has for us. I think what will happen is that keeps us at the bottom of the mountain, almost in the valley, and we'll spend all of our walk with God sort of just walking around the valley, looking up the mountain, going, I'd like to go up the mountain, but I can't because I've got to retain control.
And I think there's something maybe worse than that, in that we can become just content with walking around the bottom of the mountain.
Yeah, having beliefs.
Yep.
Oh, I believe in God. I believe in these values.
Yes.
I try to live morally.
Yes.
And that could be just circling the mountain. But God came to us in Jesus Christ to pay for our sin, right? Our rebellion, so that we could be cradled in grace, even though all of this is within us. God knows it. But so that we could actually step over the threshold, go up the mountain, or be saved. It's like allowing God, it's having God break us out of the cocoon that inevitably is like a kind of living tomb, you know.
And I think if you keep wrestling with this and that need for control, you'll either stay in the valley or you'll just give up. You'll think, I don't understand it.
And you walk away.
You walk away and you deconstruct, or you walk away completely.
Which happens a lot.
It does. Yeah. Or you deconstruct into a version of God that you can understand and control.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
To me, they're the three outcomes. You're either going to stay in the valley, you're going to walk away from faith, or you're going to deconstruct into a version of God that is...
Yeah, which is often a popular version of that is what I would describe as the bottom-up kind of view of God that you get, for example, in the Hindu Upanishads, which is this idea that, of course, we have this very immediate intuition. It's no credit to us to that sense that I said about experiencing God all the time. Like, Paul says everyone knows that there is a God. The question is, are you willing to let him be God and relate to him as God? And, what you get in, for example, the Hindu Upanishads is essentially that realization, but kind of from the bottom up, because they sense, well, God is in everything, upholding everything. There's a very honest intuition of that they've allowed themselves to perceive, that this is, they refer to this as Brahman, but it just becomes then everything is God. It becomes slightly depersonalized, and even we're part of God, and we're like a drop in the ocean, and that's just a logic. It's like a rationalized sort of version of that in a way, what I would describe as bottom up. But if everything is God, really, in a sense, nothing is God.
Yeah,
that's the sort of result of that. And so then they end up turning to gods in multiplicity, and so that's where deconstruction often goes. Oh, well, everything's God, and you end up living like essentially there is no God, because this is not a God you have a relationship with. Because if I'm part of God, I'm not. It's not really. Again, saying everything is like saying nothing.
It's a God who agrees with you anyway.
Yeah.
Because it ends up agreeing with whatever you think because God should have been.
Yeah. And again, the alternative to that is not a kind of deist view of God as the bearded guy sitting up in a cloud somewhere, right? Yeah. God is infinite, eternal, and present and sustaining. And that's true, but not in a pantheistic sense. That he is, as John Frame, the theologian John Frame says, we subscribe to what's called absolute personality theism. It's like God is the absolute person. So he's personal. He's distinct from the impersonal. And why did I get onto this subject? Oh, that's right, because of the deconstructing. Because and this is the irony of this. You're exactly right, because it always means going away. It's like going away from something that feels like real, intimate, personal encounter. It can fool people into thinking it's like, oh, we're all part of God and all of that feels, but it doesn't make any difference. It's completely non-relational then. Yeah. You're sort of relating to the universe.
Yeah.
It's the universe is.
Another version of it is you can create a version of God within Christianity, within your. I think we all do it to some extent. Try to create a God that's maybe a bit less demanding or a bit more accepting of who we are. So it's another version of.
Yeah, that's David Bentley Hart calls that monopolytheism.
Okay, right.
It is the God that's sort of the kind bearded father that sits and the bit of the genie sort of idea that he comes along. As we pursue our dreams and desires, he comes along and sort of blesses us on the way. And that's comprehensible until it's not, right?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't, that's not ever how it works. And so that causes people to really, walk away as well. Because it's like, well, that God's not working out.
So this challenge to going up the mountain and this statement Matt made to you in the podcast, what did that do for you in the weeks following, Connell?
Okay, it bugged me because I know you're right. And I know I'm split because I want to go up the mountain, but why don't I go up the mountain? So I always like to go for long walks. It's a time when I try to think these sorts of things through. And it's also a time where I can just sort of get out and try to spend time with God in a non-transactional way. So I'll say, I'm going to walk for an hour and let me just try to immerse myself in you. And not go through the list of prayer requests and things that maybe are things I've got to bring to God, but just be in God. And so in that time, I try to wrestle with that question. Now, here's the funny thing. Whenever I do this, I always get back after my walk and realize I spent no time with God, even though I set out with that intention. Other than sort of like intermittent, oh, that's right, I'm supposed to be trying to focus on walking with God here. And then my mind straight away goes on to other things. And this one day I thought this whole question of wanting to go up the mountain and trying to keep my focus and attention and going, God, I need to spend this time with you, but my mind just keeps wandering off. Like, I think I've got the attention span of about 15 seconds. And then...
See, I would say, sorry to interject again, but like, and I don't want to be hard on you here, but...
Yeah, go for it.
Like you talk about your mind as though it's not you. See, I would say you're wandering off, not your mind.
It is. Well, it is, yeah. And that's what I realise as I'm going through.
Yeah, particularly when you try to pray, there's part of you that just wants to keep running away.
Because there's other things that I'm kind of wanting to do more or deal with now. There's things that are pressing on me more than just letting go of those things and going, I'm just going to immerse myself in God at this moment. I've got things I've got to do today, and there's things I've got to organise, and there's things that are worrying me, and there's There's a multitude of things.
Yeah.
And so I realize as I'm walking that constant force of pulling me away, my mind away, is me prioritizing other things ahead of that presence.
Good, yeah.
But it would still keep, I thought, no, I'm actually going to catch myself every time. And I think probably the first half an hour, it was a battle to just get my mind back on this, concentrate on what I'm doing. And there's this constant struggle. After about half an hour, it probably got a bit easier, but I was starting to get more in the zone. And that question of why don't I want to go up the mountain, it's almost answered by the fact of this distraction that I've got going on in my head all the time, where I'm prioritizing other things. The thoughts in my mind is actually not towards God, but it's towards the things going on in my life day to day. It's pulling me away. And so I was thinking about it all. And look, I got into the walk and I was down near the river and I'm walking along and there's a sense of God saying to me, go and sit down there's a bench down there. Just go down, just sit down there. And I'm thinking, I've got to get home. I've got things to do. Okay. Anyway, so I went and I sat down on that bench and there's a real sense of peace and a staring. There was like the wind was sort of blowing through the trees and there was almost like a sense of just God was kind of walking through there. But there was a sense of, I sort of latched onto that and I thought, God, I want to go up the mountain. I do want to stand in front of your presence. That's what I want now. Right. And so as I'm sitting there reflecting on it, and my mind was laser focused at that point on God. And God said to me, no, you can't. You don't respect me. You got no idea who you're dealing with. And that was like, I know it was God because it just comes out of it's almost shocking to me at the time. I don't respect God.
So you said God said, for listeners, I think, and I know what you mean. It's just like you just know with all of your being that's
yeah. It's not a voice. It's not an audible voice. Yeah. It's like the thought drops into your head. It's almost like there's words sort of come in from outside.
It takes hold of you. It's more. It's more than just It's more than just a fleeting thought. It absolutely takes hold of you. Yeah.
It's like I didn't think of that. It wasn't what I was where I was at, and it came.
And the reality is, it's the last thing anyone of us would want to think because, what does that require of me then?
Yeah.
And I realized then. I thought I did respect you, God. I thought I did. I thought I desired you. I thought I thought I wanted to come up the mountain. And here you are basically saying, you're nowhere near coming up the mountain. Like you don't have the respect for what coming up the mountain even means. And you don't know who you're dealing with. Like you come up the mountain with the way that you are. It's not what you think. And I remember then about, people putting their foot on the mountain. If anyone steps foot on the mountain, they're dead. Like there's all of a sense, I know what you mean, God, by respect. Also, like when we're looking at Exodus, all the instructions for the tabernacle, all the detail behind how to assemble it and put it together and the fabric and the layers of the fabrics and how many the ties and the buckles and so on. It's not that I don't think it's that God likes that particular fabric or that particular design, but it was the meticulous detail of, I want you to follow this to the nth degree. You need to respect what I'm telling you to do. And then when we're talking about, the priests like Aaron entering into the Holy of Holies and putting the garments on and the anointing with oil, the sense of respect and reverence for entering into that space is huge. And I realize that my respect for God is nothing like that. Like I'm very flippant about God.
Can I just come back to the Exodus example? Because one other thing that spoke to me before we move on from here about that passage, and again, listeners, if you're not up to speed with us, I encourage you to go and listen to our sister podcast, Thrive Deeper, and there's some episodes there on the book of Exodus. But was the actual cost of that, like the perfume was expensive, the fabric was expensive. It wasn't just whatever you can find, chuck it on, and come along. So there's a cost to us walking, going up the mountain or stepping into. There's a cost, and the question for me is, what am I willing to pay?
And the cost is symbolized in the burnt offerings. Actually, one of the key offerings that they offered, which you would offer. The whole animal will be burnt up on the altar, and it said that the smoke goes up to God, and there's almost this sense as a pleasing aroma, and there's this sense that because the animal, of course, is a symbol of us offering ourselves. Romans 12:1, offering ourselves as living sacrifices, and all that's false being burnt up and being almost released to rise up to God. It's a very powerful image. But there's something that needs to be sacrificed. There's so much false that needs to be sacrificed to kind of, it's almost like as you move into the presence of God, it's like the burning fire of his presence burns up all of that. It has this refining element. And so you have to want to close that gap more than you want to hold on to what's false.
And the problem is, I think, though, with talking about it as there's a cost. It's like as if we then pay a cost that's enough. But I think what was going on with the tabernacle, all the sort of the ritual behind that, it wasn't just because it feels laborious, God will sort of honor it, like as if it's a cost I've had to pay. There's also a deep sense of fear of not getting it right. Like there's a respect there for God that says, I am going to respect. God has said this. I could sit here and go, well, that's ridiculous. We don't need don't need to follow all these instructions. That's just ridiculous. We could, in a rational mind, but it's the fear of we've got to get this right. We've got to follow the instructions. We've really got to dial into what God's asked us to do here and make sure we take this so, so, so seriously. That's kind of the sense of when God was saying, you don't respect me. It was a framing of it in that way. Like he's challenging me, and even the way that I think and try to control my own knowledge and what I understand and then make decisions out of that. It's like you're quite happy just to keep existing. You've lived your whole life in that zone, but you don't have the fear or the respect of who I am to move beyond that. Because the fear of losing that control is almost greater in a way. You know what I mean? Like, it's the respect this is what he means by respect.
So let me drill into that respect thing, because I love that idea, because respect is a relationship to greatness, isn't it? It's respecting that this is above, this is great, this is, and therefore, respect is saying this is greater, this is more important than anything else. And until we get that, I think, until we get, and I don't mean just understand it intellectually, but until with all of your being you feel this is greater and therefore more desirable than anything else. And that everything else can be sacrificed to that, but that can't be sacrificed to it. You know what I mean? Because often it does go that way around. We sacrifice, we'll just push God aside because I want to do this, right? I mean, that is an immense and terrible disposition of disrespect to God, because it's saying these other things are greater than God. And you, because I'd love you to go on to talk about that distance,
Just before you do, because I think that'll lead well into that. So my question to you was, did you feel in that statement that you felt you heard from God, did that make you feel sort of a sense of condemnation, or did it actually motivate you to, tell us about that.
It wasn't condemning, because I felt like God was saying, if you want to come up the mountain, you can come up the mountain, but we've got work to do.
Yeah,
that's great.
And there's a journey, because I've also felt you will meet me here. You will, but not yet. So I'm not condemned. I can see the problem, because I can see that when you go to spend time with God, there's always the pull of sort of looking at your watch and thinking, I've got things to do, and so on. And that, if you're suffering from that, and I think most of us do, there's a respect problem there of like, we're just not getting who God is. It's about respect, and you don't know who you're dealing with. If I knew I wouldn't do those things. And so I need to learn. And so I think that's what God's sort of saying is, I'm going to teach you more about this.
Can I just say, I think, though, the knowing, you don't know who you're dealing with, isn't about facts and doctrine or systems.
No.
It's actually about encounter and presence and transformation.
It's realization. It's a deep.
Yeah.
And that's where the will is. It's almost a willingness to realize that, isn't it?
And so I kind of left there with a sense of, I'm going on a journey. That's what God's saying to me. You want to come up the mountain, we're going to go on a journey. And so that place, it was just it's about half an hour to walk to that spot. And so every few days I would actually walk there and just go and sit back on that bench. And it felt like a sacred space.
Yeah, that's great.
And as a place, I found that I could pray for things that I would be praying for before, but it's almost like in that moment, in that space, it was like a place that God says, we're going to set this spot.
This is where we'll meet.
Apart.
Yeah.
We'll meet here. This is a place.
Yeah.
You'll just, and I felt like I could actually pray for things, and there was no transaction. It was just like, this is what's on my mind. The situations that are annoying me, and I'd get angry, like, like vent a bit at God. What this shouldn't be happening, God. I keep praying for these things, and it doesn't change. It shouldn't be like this, and it felt more like a conversation, and that I could stay there, and I didn't really want to go, and so I'd sort of keep going there, but I'd keep sort of stewing on it as well as I'm sort of walking to and from that location. And then the other day I sort of walked back down there again, and as I'm sitting there, the whole thought of desire, how much do you desire me? Of course I desire you, God.
Which is an aspect of respect, isn't it? It's desiring that as the greatest.
That's right.
Willingness to.
Yeah. And it's a sense of course I desire you, God. I've given my life to you. I'm seeking you. Of course, I just keep trying to seek you, and of course I desire you, but I don't feel as though I desire you as much as I probably should. But of course I desire you. I feel like, though, I'm having trouble bridging the gap. There's always feels like there's a gap. I'm not getting something. There's a distance between us. And I'm frustrated by that. But I do desire you. And then God sort of says, you don't desire me. That gap, that distance, this is the other really profound thing that sort of blew my mind right at that moment, was how much do you hate the gap? Let's not talk about desire. It's easy to talk about, I desire God. I desire you with all my heart, God. Easy, rolls off the tongue. But how much do you hate the gap? Do you hate it enough to do something about it?
Oh, that's great.
That's like.
I want to. Wait, can you show me this place?
That's right. We'll put the coordinates in the London.
We'll put the coordinates, and all of our listeners can go visit.
There'll be a whole queue of people waiting to sit on that bench.
So anyway, that's where I'm at with that. And it's great. Like, how much do I hate it? You're right. I'm dissatisfied with it. It's annoying. I wish it was better, but do I hate it enough to deal with it? And so I walked away from with that sort of challenging going. And now I'm sort of looking at everything going, everything that sort of then comes up, I go, I choose this instead of that. Why did I make that choice instead of going this way? And so another time, then I was walking a few days later, and I was running out of time, and I actually took a shortcut and didn't go there. I was walking back, and it got a fair way back, and it was starting to get on my conscience of, why did I do that? I've got to get back. I've got things to do, and then realized I'm making the choice again. What do I desire? And I stopped and I walked all the way back to where I needed to go.
That's great.
And I just sat on that. And nothing really profound happened, but it was just like, it's a sense of like God saying, you need to commit to doing something about this gap. I need you to take this seriously. I need you to keep prioritizing and making this important. This has to be the most important thing for you.
That's great.
And it's, you know what I love about that too, Connell, is there's such a beautiful grace and sovereignty. Those two things, like it's the grace of God that knows that he doesn't, goodness and love are following you. It's like he knows that about you, but you're not condemned for it.
No.
Rather, he wants to save you from it. And I think that's the wonder. This for me has taken the grace of God to a whole other level. First of all, there's a willingness, isn't there, to be able to see and understand these things, but to understand this and not despair means that you have to know the grace of God that comes through Jesus Christ. You have to be in the house of grace. I love you. It's like God saying, I really love you. You got that? You got that right. Because now I'm going to show you that you don't love me as much as you think you do. And it breaks my heart, but I'm going to save you from that. And for me, is the realization of that, the realization there's so much in me that actually doesn't really want to trust God. And it makes our relationship with God something like a sort of a wrestle almost, And I've always loved that picture of Jacob, wrestling the angel and, really wrestling God, in Genesis, because there's this sense that we're struggling. It's a struggle, right? But struggle with God. Right, struggle with God. Take your struggle. That's my advice to listeners. If you struggle to pray, you're frustrated, if you feel like God is please take that to God and keep taking it to God, because that's what I did, and not settling for letting yourself see that and entering the wrestle, entering the struggle, because one of the beautiful things is there's this wrestle with, I do want God, but then they've got this other stuff going on, and I still want this sort of, this kind of security as well, and I still want to try and it's this wrestle, but in the end, God always, mercifully, graciously, God always wins. And he doesn't let go of me in the wrestle, and...
But can I just say that too, that it was a journey, like when God God wasn't answering me in that moment. So it was not in the way that, God, I want to come face to face with you. I want to talk to you. Yeah. It was God saying, we will, but we've got to go. We've got work to do.
It's a journey.
What I would find is that, often I would come before God and go, God, I just need to feel your presence. I really need, and you don't feel it. You don't get there, and you get discouraged and go, well, that was a waste of time. So I'm not going to bother too much next time, Yeah. But there's a sense of God saying, this is a journey. You're not going to get what you want. There's work to be done here.
Yeah, it's great. What I think, and I think this is a good parting.
Well, just before you close, I was just going to say, we'll continue this conversation on, because we've heard a bit about Connell's journey, specifically as you just said, and I think it's important to understand that faith is not a destination. It is a journey, and it never ends, really. And we'll carry on with the next episode, and we'll talk about some of our other journeys. I think that would be great. But wrap this up, Matt. I think it's been great.
Sure. And I think I just want to really put out the challenge there, for people. Never, ever be content with just circling the mountain. Don't ever be content with just beliefs and, like spiritual habits and going around the mountain. Want more. Like, let yourself see that what you have is not all that there is, and desire more and begin that journey. Ask God to lead you and take you on that journey. Give it the time that it needs. I just believe that God will take you somewhere that you would never have imagined you could go.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Thrive Perspectives. Our hope is that these discussions will challenge you to look at life from a new perspective. You'll find all our resources at the Thrive Today website, thrivetoday.tv. If there's a topic that you'd like us to discuss, please email us. Our email is contact@thrivetoday.tv. Until next time, our prayer is that you will thrive.